just gonna borrow your mic.
Yes.
Or you can sit. You can sit down.
Okay.
Hi everybody. We are gonna get started. Thank you so much all for coming out tonight. My name is Bex. I'm the events coordinator here at Books Are Magic, and we are so excited to have Lana and Monique Truong here tonight celebrating it was recently named, long listed in the National Book Award. A few housekeeping notes to go before we get started. We'll do a Q&A towards the end of the night. Just need your questions, follow them tight, we'll get them answered. Afterwards, Lana will be signing and personalizing. Lana has generously pre-signed all the books. If you want to put your name in it or someone else's name in it, it's a gift for a crush. You can have that happen at the end. Please, when we're line up for that. During this virtual live stream, we'd love to encourage you to buy a copy of the Autobiography of Thao online in the description. So you all read the Eventbrite description, supposedly, because there's a quiz later. So instead of reading that description, I'm going to read from my own shelf talk. I read this book several months ago in an art form, very fortunately, and it's one of my favorite this year. So you should definitely, we have a lot of copies, and you should buy them all. Written in the queer tradition and defiance of Gertrude Stein, the Autobiography of Thao is a remarkable ode to the many relationships, artistic, romantic, and otherwise, of Lana Lynn's life. Told through the voice of their partner, Thao Lynn, quote unquote, blurs the lines between portrait and self-portrait. But more importantly, she situates life as one of interdependence. During this Anthropocene, in the age of loneliness, I am grateful to be reminded that life is meant to be lived in communion. This event is co-sponsored by the Asian American Writers Workshop. For 30 years, the AAWW has amplified. Yeah, let's give it up for the AAWW. For 3 decades, they have amplified the work of Asian Americans, doing so with a focus on expanding the definite. Sorry, I feel like it keeps cutting out. And if it doesn't, oh, it does. It's not just me.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna stand over here. Doing so with a focus on expanding the definition not only of what it means to be Asian American, but also what it means to be a writer. They do this through their additional magazine, The Margins, as well as their programming, which includes events, fellowships, and community outreach. We get the great fortune to work with them a lot, and it is always such a pleasure to have them co-sponsor events. So if you'd like to learn more, please visit them at aaww.org. I'm almost done. Tonight's star of the show, Lana Lynn, is a writer, artist, and filmmaker based in New York and Connecticut. Their prolific works and collaborative projects with Thao as Lynn plus Lam have been exhibited at festivals and at art and educational spaces throughout the world. Having had 3 years of psychoanalytic training before dropping out, they sometimes still dream of one day becoming a psychoanalyst. Conversation extraordinaire. Monique Truong, born in Saigon, South Vietnam, came to the U.S. as a refugee in 1975. She's a novelist, essayist, children's book author, and librettist. She is the author of several works, including The Sweetest Fruits and The Book of Salt, both of which we have here tonight for you to also purchase and get signed. And a graduate of Yale College and Columbia Law School. She's received a Guggenheim Fellowship, Hodder Fellowship, and Bard Fiction Prize, among many other honors. Without any further ado, please join me in the warmest welcome to Lana and Monique.
Thank you so much, Bex. Maybe I can get a copy of that intro. That was so great. Thank you all for being here. It's really incredible to see you all here, some of whom I haven't seen in decades, and others I maybe haven't even met. And it's great to see these faces. Plus, I was just telling folks here at Books Are Magic and Monique that just walking over here was incredible because I lived just a couple doors down from here on Montague Street about 35 years ago. You won't read about it in the book because it's not in the book, but maybe there'll be a sequel. I just want to use my crib notes to thank everybody for being here, and thanks to the people on live stream for coming. Thank you to Bex, Alexa, and Carmelo here at Books Are Magic. It's really amazing to be able to have this event in this beloved local bookstore. And I want to express my enormous enormous gratitude to the incredible Dorothy, a publishing project. Danielle Dutton and Martin Riker are the absolute dream team of publishers. Many thanks also to Amelia Pasanza of Lavender Public Relations, who's been working tirelessly to get the book out there and get it publicized. And my unending gratitude to H. Lantau Lam, without whom this book literally would not exist. And of course, I'm deeply honored to be in conversation with Monique Truong. So thankful for your work and your presence here tonight. I also am grateful to have been given the opportunity to share this space with you on this land of the Lenape people. I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge with humility the settler violence of which I am complicit here on what was once the Lenape Hope King and around the globe, and most notably in Gaza at this particular moment. I'm a 5 foot tall Asian, although I'm sitting down, so you can't take that measure. Androgynous, femme leaning, and wearing a blue jacket with white palm trees on it. And have, yeah. Okay, so I will start us off with a short excerpt from the book. Let's see if I can do that with this microphone.
Shall I hold the mic for
No,
you?
I think I'm good.
Okay.
I'm going to read a very short excerpt, just starting from the beginning, if you feel like following along, and then I'm going to actually skip a little ahead for the sake of time. So this is chapter 1, Before I Came to New York. By way of water, my life with Lana Lin began. I was born in My Tho, Vietnam. I have in consequence always preferred living in a temperate climate, but it is difficult, even in the US, to find a temperate climate and live in it. The intense humidity in Vietnam compelled me to seek more of it through multiple showers per day. I find myself even now happiest in the vicinity of water. My chin at rest on my parents' windowsill, I spent hours meditating on myriad forms of water descending from the skies, glittering sword-like streaks, fierce torrents, quivering beads clinging to the pane. I recall the wonder of my first snow in Vancouver, how the ice crackled on the window that, like me, was not suited to frigidity. I'm going to skip ahead to the first full paragraph on page 9. I think that is my phone. I'm sorry. Okay. I hope one of you isn't calling me. Okay, I guess I'll just let it go. The Autobiography of Alice B. Toklas, Gertrude Stein's most popular book, is a gossip column of geniuses, geniuses' wives, and their servants, or those who serve them. It is a chronicle of modernism, and it is a history of sentences and how Gertrude Stein constructed them. Her greatest passion, perhaps not Alice, so much as the long, precise, well-constructed sentence. In the Autobiography of Alice B. Toklas, Gertrude Stein ventriloquizes her own memoir through the ruse of her lifetime companion's tale of their quarter-of-a-century partnership. Should the Autobiography of H. Lantau Lam be published by 2025, it too will commemorate a 25-year history, that of H. Lantau Lam and Lana Lin. The lives of Alice B. Toklas and Gertrude Stein are remote from mine and Lana Lin's in almost every way, except that ours also revolve around the arts. Presumably we share our homosexuality as well, theirs as closeted lesbians and ours as openly gender nonconforming queers. Practically none of the smaller details of our lives resemble each other's. Alice B. Toklas entered Gertrude Stein's life through an invitation to Stein's already celebrated Saturday evening dinner, which was cooked by Stein's servant Hélène. Later, Alice B. Toklas and Gertrude Stein would hire at least 2 Vietnamese cooks, or a succession, as Alice B. Toklas quips in the Alice B. Toklas cookbook. In Everybody's Autobiography, Gertrude Stein states that after trouble with the French, they decided to have an Indochina man, and admits to having had so many that she cannot remember them all. Monique Truong would fictionalize these Indo-Chinese into the character of Bin in the Book of Salt. And this is how I know that my people cooked for Alice B. Toklas and Gertrude Stein. We neither hosted nor were invited to dinner. I once said to Lana Lynn that she had no people, so her people, which she does not have, are not even in the kitchen. Gertrude Stein and Alice B. Toklas's first Indochinaman, Track, would lean against the door between the kitchen and dining room and reminisce about when he was a child. Lana Lynn has also leaned against the kitchen door frame, for we have no kitchen door, and chattered about her childhood as I have prepared dinner. Gertrude Stein gently mocks Track's diminutive stature, calling him a little man who speaks about when he was a little boy in a village where the circus would come, and she comments in an aside that they do have them, circuses, in Indochina. Track also gets a diminutive name. Alice B. Toklas is Alice B. Toklas, or Alice Toklas, and Gertrude Stein is Gertrude Stein, but Track is simply Track, and Nguyen is Nguyen, or Nguyen might be Nguyen, as Gertrude Stein writes in Everybody's Autobiography. Track used to see phantoms rise up and rise and rise and rise, and that's a quote. Although his friend in Indochina said that there were no longer phantoms in Indochina since the war. I too have seen phantoms during and after war. I grew up entranced by mythical superheroes whose hair could strangle a demon spirit, and ghosts whose tongue could impale the eyes of the living or the dead. The borders between this earthly existence and the netherworld were porous, and so I could identify as easily with mere mortals as with immortals. Those of us who have been ghosted by colonial and imperial rulers may return with a vengeance to retrieve our histories, our own ghost stories. We may rise up and rise and rise and rise.
Hi.
Hi.
That was wonderful.
Thank you.
I've spent so many wonderful hours with you and Lang on the page. So it's wonderful to hear your or a voice, your voice, but we'll get to the voice question
Yes.
soon.
Complicated.
It's complicated. um, well, let's begin, Lana Lynn, which I love, because it mimics the Gertrude Stein that is, her fully formed self on the pages of Autobiography of Alice B. Toklas. She's never Gertrude, she's Gertrude Stein. In your book, you're Lana Lynn, always, which is wonderful. I think I'd love it if we could begin by you sort of sharing with us when you first read the autobiography of Alice B. Toklas. Like, set the stage for us. Like, how old were you? Was it for a class? And then, if you could also share with us what stayed with you after that first reading.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I don't remember. I don't know how old I was, but I was fairly young and new to New York. It was not for a class. I've never been assigned Gertrude Stein in any class. I So I know that I visited Bryant Park and saw the statue there in 1992. And so I know that Gertrude Stein was this kind of mythic lesbian figure already at that point for me. And I went to the book with that in mind. And I was really fascinated by this idea of telling an autobiography without telling it, this kind of ventriloquism that she does. And that's really what brought me to the book, and that's what stayed with me. And then there was the ways in which I wanted to, I push back against the written history and to make a space for Asians, which you already have done. And so I follow in that path.
Okay, so would you say that this was around what, the 90s, the late 90s, early 90s?
Yes.
Yes, early 90s.
Early 90s that I read it.
Okay,
It was before I met Lan Thao.
Right. Okay, so that, I wanted to establish that because my next question is something that you shared sort of towards the end of your book. It's that I think it's around the year 2000 when you met Lan, right? And you're in Toronto, where Lan was sort of based at the time, and you're on your very first long walk together. And you share that was when Lana Lin floated the idea that there should be a book called The Autobiography of H. Lan Thao Lam. Now, okay, I need more. I need more here because that's a really bold thing to float, on the first long walk.
Okay, so a little bit of artistic license. It was, I think I said might have been on the first long walk. It probably wasn't on the exact first long walk, but it was actually very early in the relationship. So you're right to be somewhat astonished. And I think it says a lot about about Lan Thao and my relationship. And one, Lan Thao is always game. Two, it's true that it was bold, and I feel that Lan Thao emboldens me, and a lot of the narrative is about how Lan Thao emboldens me in the world to be myself in the world.
Wow, love that response. So when you were floating this idea, were you because you do share that you like the sound of the title. So was it that a book should exist in the world with this title, or was it specifically Lana Lin is going to write this book?
Yeah, it was Lana Lin is going to write this book. Because it would emulate Gertrude Stein writing the book. So there was no one else to write it.
Okay. So if it's not clear, I'm trained as a lawyer, so sometimes when
you're going to get to the bottom.
Yeah, I know. So, but I mean this. I ask these questions out of love and curiosity. But okay, so I think that's a nice way to sort of segue into yes, this idea of being bold and the existence of this book. And I was going to read this part, but I think it's a really short passage, but to me, it seems like it's one of the keys to this book. So it's on page 51. It'd be really lovely to hear it in your voice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I always find it weird when the person who's asking the question reads from the book. I'm like, you didn't write it. Okay, so it's the paragraph here. It begins with, but being in the majority. Do you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, and just to the end of that paragraph.
Thanks. Love this. Thanks for prompting me. But being in the majority or minority is not why people of color are in danger of disappearing. It is because white supremacy makes non-whites disappear, regardless of numbers. Testaments to the accomplishments, crimes, crises, and romance of white people have been amply recorded. But what of this seemingly insignificant, unverifiable, imaginative minutia that composes the non-heroic vernacular of people of color? This gossamer substance that interweaves our lives fuels dream work, myth-making, and fantasies, and as Maxine Hong Kingston, that I've talked about earlier, notes of women of color, keeps us alive.
that's what you are in for. I mean, wow. Okay. So to me, when I read that, I thought, okay, there is this clear tension between, the amply recorded romance of white people, right? And and what you write about this risk of being disappeared. And I I'd love to hear you talk more about how that may have motivated and sort of germinated this book into being.
Well, it's absolutely the reason I wrote it. If you think of Gertrude Stein as kind of being an emblem of modernism, um, I wanted to ask what's missing from that. So in the book, late in the book, I reference. I mean, earlier you've heard that I reference the marginalized Asian servants that Stein writes about. Late in the book, I reference the autobiography that Alice B. Toklas actually wrote, which is What is Remembered, and she talks about the Chinese refugees that are hiding in the basement of a friend of hers, and nobody has seen them. They're invisible in the basement. They're sequestered there because of the San Francisco earthquake that resulted in fires that destroyed Chinatown. So the Chinese refugees are there, and I talk about how my goal in the book is to bring, it's kind of a braided reference because I also reference, I reference the understory of a forest and these gopher tortoises that were inhabiting this land that my family had owned, that I had inherited, and that I felt like had been going to waste for all these years. But then we discovered that gopher tortoises were inhabiting there. Gopher tortoises can only exist with an open understory. So I say that my goal is to raise the understory to the surface. And actually, Julieta Singh beautifully writes in the blurb for the book that the book tries to, raise the Asian understory or the Asian diasporic understory.
Well, I think that the word that you just used is to describe what is going on in this book is perfect, braided, because it is. And I think that that's one of the reasons why I actually found it very hard to kind of pick out things to sort of have you speak with us about, because it is so incredibly intertwined and just perfect in the ways that these seemingly disparate sort of subjects come together in this this. Wait a minute, I have the word that you've used to describe the book, and we can talk about that now, which is autobiography. And I'm assuming that's a word you've coined.
Well, I mean, I've coined it drawing on Audre Lorde's use of the term biomythography as a subtitle for Zami, a new spelling of my name. But I was absolutely thrilled when Dorothy, the publisher, put autobiomythography as the category of the book.
Wait.
Yeah, exactly. Because when we were doing the proofs, and the last thing was like to look at the copyright page, and they put a Library of Congress had a classification of memoir, and then they had to have this like thing about the truth of the memoir, and I was like, do we need to have that? And they were like, well, what would you want it to be categorized as? And I'm like, autobiography. And then they're like, sorry, but that's not a Library of Congress classification. So, but they did, we're able to put it on the book cover, which was great. So that's my riff on Audre Lorde's, but maybe kind of adding the auto part that she leaves out, perhaps to signal it, but also to question it. Yeah. And the way that Lorde describes biomythography as a kind of complex of myth and biography, history. Yeah, interestingly, she leaves out the self.
Thanks for pointing that out about the category, because I have the advanced reading copy and I have your final copy, and I didn't notice. Wow,
It's subtle.
it's subtle. Let's see. Yes. This, to me, there are many ways I think we can describe what's going on in this book, and you described it, using this incredible term. But here's, for me, another of the keys, I think, to what's going on. And this one is rather short, so if it's okay, I'll
Of
read it,
course.
and then okay.
I'm thrilled for you to read it.
So this is the quote. It may be that a great love is shown through listening to another's story. It may be that a greater love still is shown through telling another's story. A different kind of love arises when merging another's story with one's own. Right? Right. Applause. So, this is the amazing thing is besides that incredibly powerful, concise language, Lana Lin follows by saying that, or Lang follows by saying that Lana Lin felt that, quote, she was writing herself out of existence. But now she wonders, quote, whether she has written herself into existence. So let's talk about that apprehension of a kind of disappearance by inhabiting, quote unquote, someone else's voice. And how did you navigate that, especially when you were veering more towards that than coming into existence by writing this book?
Well, yeah, so I say in the book, I protest in the writing of it because I might be writing myself out of existence. And I think that came from sharing the manuscript to my writing group, and they always wanted more about Lan Thao. Lan Thao was much more interesting to them. So I used to complain that I was, in this project, which I created. I take responsibility for that, of writing myself out of existence. But then I discovered one thing that's really advantageous about writing this way, which is very peculiar, and I probably can't do it ever again, is writing about yourself in the third person is very liberating. There's this space of distance that's created in that I think I started thinking of it as a kind of impossible self-analysis. So one could be both, maybe a little more critical, but also, and more importantly, more sympathetic and caring.
Wow. Did you, I was going to ask you that question about process. So now we know that you shared it with your writing group. Now, were you sharing with Lan Thao?
No. Lan Thao, way before, I think when I floated the idea, basically gave me blanket permission. And I think I could only have ever written this with that. So they gave me blanket permission, and they weren't going to read it until whenever I was going to be ready, which was I wasn't gonna. It was not going to be finalized until they read it. So, but it was basically all written when I shared it with Lanta.
And would you like to share with us what Lang Tao's initial reaction was? Or not?
I hope that I'm appropriately conveying this, but I think they thought it was great. Lanta, some of you can talk later to Lantao, and they'll probably say it's all lies. That is what they've been saying throughout most of in jest, I think.
Well, Lang Tao has great taste. So, well, you've shared that your writing group were often asking you about for more about Lang Tao, and that it's liberating for you to write about yourself in the third person. Were there moments in the writing where you felt, you know what, I prefer to be in Lang Tao's voice, or I prefer to be in this third person voice? Or was it sort of, a nice going back and forth? Because the book goes back and forth. Did you write it in that way?
No, I think I kind of feel like it's all the same voice.
Ah.
Maybe you didn't experience it that way, which would be interesting to hear about.
I'm very gullible and easily led. You tell me it's Lang Tao, I'm gonna go.
Oh, I don't think it's Lan Tao's voice. I wasn't. So there's debate about whether or not Gertrude Stein was properly emulating Alice's voice, and many say that she was. I was not pretending to sound like or be Lan Tao.
So is it possible to describe the voice as a collaborative voice? A voice that is neither yours or Lang Tao, but something?
It's closer to my voice.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But it's a kind of an invented voice for this project. Yeah.
Wow, interesting. So when you were writing, you didn't actually think of it as this is, I'm now writing in Lang Tao.
No, I think that would have really messed me up. I mean, I would have to. You probably have to do this as a fiction writer. I would have to sort of be in the head of kind of inhabit whatever situation I was trying to describe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting. Well, I'd love it if you folks would read this book and get back to Lana Lynn and tell her if you're perceiving two voices, because I really did. Because I mean, you do a fantastic job of kind of allowing us to understand these two individuals. They are separate individuals. Yeah. So yes, I
mean, I do hope that they definitely feel like two individuals,
right?
And they would naturally have that character, because I have a certain understanding of who Lana is. That's quite different from my understanding of who Lan Tao is. So I have to write it from a kind of different perspective.
Yeah.
But I guess, the voice, though, is slightly a different thing.
Well, it's, first of all, it's, to me, what I sensed throughout was just incredible intelligence and charm. So, how you thought of that voice, that's how I received it. So thank you for that. Let's see. Oh, how are we doing on time? Okay, okay, great. Oh my God. Which question will I ask? Okay, let's see. Hmm. So, well, maybe we should just use the time we have together for you to tell us a little bit more about your publisher. Because the Dorothy Project, I mean, I looked at the list and it's fabulous.
It is.
Yeah, so it's a nonprofit press. What? How does it exist in the world?
It's a small independent feminist press. But I need to thank Jackie Wang for bringing it to my attention. I didn't know about this incredible press, and they're very unique that they only publish 2 books a year. And they are just 2 people, so Danielle Dutton and Martin Riker. But so Jackie brought it to my attention, and then I, being the kind of compliant subject that I am, was not going to submit it because I read the fine print and they said in their open call, no memoirs. And then my writing group was like, so don't call it a memoir. And I was like, oh my God. So I submitted to the open call, which is an incredible thing that they have, because for people like myself who are not agented, there's not that many places you can just send your manuscript unsolicited. So yeah, sent it and they got back to me and it's been amazing.
Wow. They also have really great taste. So yay, congratulations.
They do. Read the Dorothy books, they're incredible. Yeah.
Okay, so I think at this point, we get to open it up to the audience. So please ask your questions and then I will repeat it for the folks on live stream. Okay? So raise your hands. Yes, okay, so I saw the gal in the orange first. Hello.
This might be kind of an expected question for Lana, but I wanted to go back to this idea of ventriloquism, which I love that you use that word. And because I thought a lot about your film, The Cancer Journal Revisited, and we've talked about it in relation to a kind of idea of, if not ventriloquism, then kind of reciting the words of others. So it's like a cousin to ventriloquism in a way, right? But then what you were just saying in response to Monique's question about what voices are here, right? So I wonder just if you could dig into this little wormhole of a question a little bit more and think through for us, like maybe trace if your original, if the appeal originally of Gertrude Stein's book was this kind of weird ventriloquism that's happening. I just wonder if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. That is the appeal. Thank you, Toby. Of course, your question is incredible.
Lana, could you repeat her question?
Oh my
Or
goodness.
I could
Can
if you like.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'll do a short form of your question if that's okay. So the question is about ventriloquism and or repeating the words of others.
Or in this case, like because ventriloquizing means speaking. If I am ventriloquizing, right, as a verb, it means I am speaking in a voice, but someone else is. And I'm trying to figure out, like, I'm trying to make my way through this question of like, whose voice? Essentially, maybe it's a version of your question, Monique, right? But if you're ventriloquizing and I'm just curious to think through, like.
So yeah, you've totally caught me because in fact, that would be the answer to Monique would be that I'm ventriloquizing Lan Tao's voice, which I've just said I wasn't doing. And so I have no way out of that contradiction other than the fact that I do know that I did kind of dig into the uncertainty, and that was the appeal, like this kind of the unstable author was what was interesting to me. And occasionally in the editing process, there was sometimes questions around, would you like to make it more clear who's speaking? And I would be like, no. In fact, how can this be worded so that it still remains uncertain?
Mm, mm. May I just say that to me the word ventriloquizing is it, that always suggested that there was a dummy, and that was always one of my apprehensions about the autobiography of Alice B. Toklas. And I never thought of your project in those terms. I thought of her project in that term. I thought of your project as a collaboration, sort of more in terms of life collaboration than perhaps, the words, on the page or the. So this is why I asked that question about voice. But thank you for the question. And there was.
Yes, thank you. I feel that it would be a shame if we all left the room without hearing you talk a little bit about the photograph on the cover, which may also be a kind of borrowing or ventriloquizing of its individual.
Yes, it is.
Right. So the question was about the cover of the book. Yes, and for Lana Lynn to just speak a little bit more about it.
So I'm going to plug myself at a book launch where I'm already plugging myself, but I just wrote a piece about the cover on LitHub. So if, I'd probably say it better there. But for those, who those are holding it in their hands, this is a kind of restaging of the 1933 first edition of the Autobiography of Alice B. Toklas. The photograph was taken by Man Ray. And then Danielle Dutton did the design for the book, emulating the first edition. So yeah, I do think it is a kind of, now we're going to have to unpack like what really does ventriloquism mean, but it is a kind of homage and a reenactment of sorts, in the sense like my text is a homage and a reenactment of sorts, but pushing against the Autobiography of Alice B. Toklas. I feel that I have not done justice to your question because of your expression of not quite satisfied.
I'm very satisfied.
Okay.
The essay in LitHub is fabulous. I suggest folks read it because I did. That's
Thank
where
you.
I got the
you.
wonderful description of what this work is, autobiography. Any other questions? Yes.
I wrote this down, so I'm just gonna read it. But in leaning into the uncertain voice or an unstable author, how did you handle moments of recall that were difficult during your process? Did you lean into that as well? And what section was the toughest to write?
Do you want me a hand? Hand me your phone.
That is.
Be easier.
That makes sense.
Okay, so the question is, in leaning into the uncertain voice or an unstable author, how did you handle moments of recall that were difficult during your process? Did you lean into that as well? What section was the toughest to write? Excellent question.
It is an excellent question, and I actually, the toughest parts were those that I couldn't recall because they're not my memories. The toughest chapter is the penultimate chapter called The War. And in Alice B. Toklas, it's the war, for World War I, which Alice and Gertrude lived together through. In this book, it's the war is the Vietnam War, that and it's basically Lantao's, or my rendition of Lantao's childhood, which I obviously didn't live through. So that I feel like I slaved over that chapter. Yeah.
I guess, what did you do in those moments though, where, like, were you ever worried about working through those moments of potential fabrication, or like that excited you and you leaned into that? Or like what was
Probably
your, like,
neither. I mean, I think sorry, I just there was something you said I was going to respond to and I've forgotten it. But
like if someone else was interested in doing something like this and they were worried about authenticity
that's
or
what I was
not,
yes.
right? Like
right. So
did
when
you
I
work
said
with
that I probably couldn't have written this without blanket permission from Thao years before I ever even started it. That's what allowed me to just feel free to do it. So I didn't have that kind of anxiety. I might have had anxiety like we all do, like blocked writing, but I didn't have the anxiety so much of, am I, reproducing the veracity of this experience? Sometimes I would go to Lantau and say, I think I made this up, or and then they would be like, I don't care, like do what you want.
Yes, in the back. Okay, so
are we calling it?
yeah, I think we're gonna end on that question. But the fabulous question from the back is, has writing this book changed their love in any way?
Well, I can't speak for them, although I appear to have done so. It's reinforced my love.
Oh.
Yeah, it's reinforced my love. You can talk to Lantau about how they feel.
Well, are we? Okay, I agree. That is a lovely way to end. Thank you so much. Thank you
so
Lana.
much. Thank you for the great questions. Thank you so much, Monique.
Thank you all for joining us. Thank you to Monique and Lana for letting us celebrate with you. Thank you to AAWW for co-sponsoring this. A reminder, if you're looking live stream, you can buy books at the link in the description. If you're here, you can buy books here. We have so many books. Just put all of our free sign. It's October 1st. That's a thing that means you should buy books. On a serious note, embedded books are suffering. Dorothy is truly one of my favorite presses. They publish 2 books a year. They were the first publishers for Renee Gladman. You cannot go wrong supporting them and supporting Lana and supporting us. So you can buy books at the front. But first, we're all going to be very chill, and we're going to stay seated as I bring Lana to the signing line in the back. My coworkers are pointing to where it is. They will be back there with a nice pen that I will grab for them. And signing. But we're gonna be chill for a second before that happens. And then you're gonna line up down the center aisle, and we're gonna pick up the chairs as soon as you stand up. So make sure to grab your belongings. You can also buy Monique's books at the front. And thank you so much for reading this, and have a great night.
Thank you so much. You were great.